eyes might. And I am still giving it a shot. I might change my mind. But let's go ahead and dive into the summary. Vampire hunter Elena Deverox knows she is the best, but she does not know if even she's good enough for this job. Hired by the dangerously beautiful Archangel Raphael, a being so lethal that no mortal wants his attention, Elena knows failure is not an option, even if the task is impossible. Because this time, it's not a wayward vamp she has to track, it's an archangel gone bad. The job put Elena in the midst of a killing spree like no other, and pull her to the razor's edge of passion, even if the hunt does not destroy her. Succumbing to Raphael's seductive touch just might, for when archangels play, mortals break. So, yeah, that's a little summary about this one. Let's get into it. When Elena told people she was a vampire hunter, the first reaction was an inevitable gasp, followed by, "You go around sticking those sharp stakes in their evil, putrid hearts." Okay, maybe the actual words varied, but the feel was the same. It made her want to track down and exterminate the idiot 15th century storyteller who'd made up that tale in the first place. Of course, the vampires had already taken care of it. After the first few of them ended up in whatever passed for an emergency room back then. Elena didn't stake vampires. She tracked them, bagged them, and returned them to their masters, the angels. Some people called her kind bounty hunters, but according to her guild card, she was licensed to hunt vampires and assorted others, which made her a vampire hunter with the attendant benefits, including hazard pay. That pay was very healthy, and had to compensate for the fact that hunters occasionally had their jugular store open. Still, Elena decided she needed a pay raise after her calf muscle started protesting. She had been stuck in a cramped corner of an alley in the Bronx for the past 2 hours. A tall female with pale, almost white and silver eyes. The hair was a pain in the butt. According to her sometimes friend Ransom, she may as well wear a sign announcing her presence, since dyes wouldn't work on it for longer than 2 minutes. Elena had a great collection of knit caps. She was tempted to pull a current one down over her nose, but she had a feeling that would only intensify the slanderous ambiance of the stank piece of New York City that led her to thinking about the virtues of nose plugs. Something rustled behind her. She swiveled to come face to face with a stalking cat, its eyes reflecting silver in the darkness. Satisfied the animal was what it seemed, she returned her attention to the sidewalk, wondering if her eyes shone as frequently as that cat's. It was a good thing she inherited dark gold skin from her Moroccan grandmother, or she'd have resembled a ghost. "Where the hell are you?" she muttered, reaching down to rub at her calf. The vamp had led her on a merry chase, and through its own sheer stupidity, he didn't know what he was doing, which made him a little hard to second guess. Ransom at once asked her if it bothered her to round up helpless vampires and drag their sorry asses back to the life of virtual slavery. He had been laughing hysterically at the time. No, it didn't bother her, just like it didn't bother him. The vamps chose that slavery, 100 years duration, the instant they petitioned an angel to make them almost immortal. If they had stayed human, if they had gone to their graves in peace, they wouldn't have found themselves bound by a contract signed in blood. While the angels did take advantage of their position, a contract was a contract. A flash of light in the street. Bingo! It was the target chomping away on a cigar and boasting on his cell phone about how he was a made man now, and no prissy angel was going to tell him what to do. Even with the several feet of distance between them, she could smell the sweat pooling under his armpits. The vampirism hadn't yet advanced enough to melt away the fat he wore like a spare coat, and he thought he could she pulled off her knit cap and stuffed it into her back pocket. Her hair tumbled around her shoulders in a soft cloud, distinctive and bright. It wasn't a risk, not tonight. She might have been well known by the locals, but this vampire had a distinctly Australian accent. He'd recently arrived from Sydney, and his one master wanted him back in that city pronto. Golly. The vampire jumped and dropped his phone. Elena barely stopped herself from rolling her eyes. He wasn't even fully formed. The canines he'd flashed in surprise were only baby teeth. No wonder his master was pissed. The bonehead had to have scuttled around not much more than a year or so after service. Sorry, she said with a smile as he retrieved the phone and weighed her up. She knew what he saw, a lone female with bimbo blonde hair, dressed in black leather jeans and form-fitting long-sleeve top in the same color. No visible weapons. Because he was young and stupid, the image made him relax. Charlotte thing. He reached in his pocket for a lighter. That was when Elena leaned forward, one hand sweeping behind her back and under her top. Mr. Boyce is very disappointed in you. She retrieved and locked the necklet into place before he processed the meaning of the huskily spoken censure. His eyes bulged red, but instead of screaming, he stood silently in place. Hunter's necklet had a way of freezing a man. Fear was a live thing skittering across his face. She'd felt sorry for him if she had known that he'd torn out 4 human throats in the course of his escape. That was not acceptable. The angels protected their gift, but even they had limits. Mr. Bose had authorized the use of any and all force necessary on this one. Now she let that knowledge bleed into the open, let the vampire see her willingness to hurt him. His face lost what color he managed to retain. She smiled. Follow me. He trotted behind her like an obedient puppy. Damn, she loved the necklace. Her best friend Sarah liked to shoot the targets with honest-to-God arrows. The arrowheads were doctored to contain the same control chip that made the necklace so effective. The instant it touched the skin, the chip apparently emitted some kind of electromagnetic field that temporarily short-circuited a vampire's neural processes, leaving the target open to suggestion. Elena didn't know the science of it all, but she knew the limits and advantages of her chosen method of capture. Yeah, she did have to get closer to her targets than Sarah, but conversely, there was no chance of missing and hitting an innocent bystander, which Sarah had once done. It had cost her half a year's pay to settle the lawsuit, lips curving at the thought of how pissed her friend had been at not making the shot. Elena opened the passenger side door of the car she'd been parked nearby. Inside, the baby vamp squeezed in his girth with effort. Making sure he was belted in, she called Mr. Abose's head of security. I've got him. The voice at the other end instructed her to plug the package off at a private airstrip. Unsurprised by the chosen location, she hung up and began driving in silence. It would have been a bit redundant to try and make conversation, as the vamp had lost the ability to speak the instant she claimed him. The muting was a side effect of the neural straitjacket created by the necklet. Before the inception of the chip-embedding device, vampire hunting had been something of a suicidal career choice, and as even the babyest vamps had the ability to tear a human to pieces. Of course, according to the latest research, vampire hunters weren't quite human, but they were close enough. Arriving at the airstrip, she cleared security and was directed to the tarmac. The team charged with escorting the vampire back to Sydney was waiting beside a sleek private jet. Elena took the captured man to them and immediately nodded at her to go in. She had to stow the package personally, as they didn't have the license to handle him at this point in the journey. Clearly, Mr. Bose had good lawyers. He hadn't taken any chances that could lead to him being brought up on charges by the Vampire Protection Authority. Not that the BPA had ever managed to make a cruelty allegation stick. All the angels had to do was display a couple of photos of humans with their throats torn out, and the jury was ready not only to acquit, but to give them a medal in the process. Elena had escorted the vamp up the stairs to the large open grate at the back of the his shirt. Sorry, Ben, you killed 3 women and 1 old man. That tilts the pity slate over in the wrong direction. Slamming the door on him, she padlocked it. The necklace would go with him to Sydney. From there, it would be returned directly to the guild as per the agreed protocol with all chip embedded devices. He's ready to go, boys. The guard all 4 had followed her inside, looked her up and down with eyes the startling shade of a robin's egg. No injuries. Impressive. He handed over an envelope. The transfer has been made to your guild account as agreed. Elena checked the confirmation slip. Her eyebrows rose. Mr. Bose has been generous. A bonus for early and unharmed capture of the target. Mr. Bose has plans for him. Old Jerry was his favorite secretary. Elena winced. The problem with being basically immortal was that you could have a lot of things done to you and not die. She'd once seen a vampire who had every one of his limbs amputated without anesthetic. By the time the Guild Rescue Squad liberated him from the clutches of the hate group that had kidnapped him, he was beyond reason or coherence. But there had been a video. That's how they knew the tortured man had remained conscious throughout. She bet the angels didn't show that video to the petitioners who came in droves hoping to be made. Then again, maybe they did. The angels only made about 1,000 vamps each year, and from what Alina had seen, the hopeful outnumbered them by the hundreds of thousands. She had no idea why. As far as she was concerned, the cost of immortality was far too high. Better to live free and turn to dust when the time came than end up locked in a wooden box while you waited for your master to decide your fate. Distaste and lacerated film on her tongue, she slid both the new confirmation slip and the envelope into a pants pocket. Please thank Mr. Bose for his generosity. The bodyguard inclined his head, and she glimpsed the edges of what she guessed to be a raven tattooed on his shaved head. She was too tall. He was too tall to see for sure, but the others were shorter and all bore that unique mark. I saw you were unattached. He glanced pointedly at the plain silver hoops in her ears. No marigold, no entangled amber. But she didn't make the mistake of assuming he wanted the date. The guards of the Wing Brotherhood practiced celibacy while on the job, since the punishment for failure was the removal of a body part. Elena never quite managed to discover which. She figured she wasn't tempted enough. Yes, I'm free. Work-wise, too. She preferred to complete one job before letting up the next. There were always more vamps to track down. Mr. Bose wanted me to track another renegade. No, but he has a friend who requires your service. The guard passed over a second envelope. This one sealed. The appointment is for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Please ensure you attend. It has been clear with your guild deposit paid. If the guild had signed off, that meant it was legitimate. Sure, what's the need? Manhattan. Elena's soul went ice cold for only one angel. Would that single word suffice as enough of direction? Even the angels had a pecking order, and she knew very well who was at the top. But past, as had swept over her, the fear passed. Mr. Bose, while powerful, was hardly likely to know an archangel, one of the cadre of 10 that decided who would be made and who would do the making. Is there a problem? Her head snapped up at the guard's quiet comment. No, of course not. She made a show of checking her watch. I better get going. Please give my regards to Mr. Bose. With that, she exited the lush confines of the private jet and the Puget's pier stink up the cargo. She'd never been able to figure out why so many morons got made. Perhaps she thought they wouldn't okay but turn into bricks after a few years of drinking blood. Who knew what the hell that stuff did to your brain? But that theory didn't explain her latest catch. He was 2 years old, max. Shrugging, she got in the car. And because she wanted to tear open the sealed envelope with her teeth, she waited until she was home in her beautiful nest of an apartment in lower Manhattan, giving how much time they spent choosing shit. Most hunters tended to make their homes into havens. Elena was no exception. Entering, she kicked off her boots and headed toward the luxurious bath and shower unit. Usually she made a ritual out of washing off the grime and slathering on the creams and perfumes she collected. Ransom thought her girly tendencies the funniest thing ever, constantly teased her over them, but the last time he opened his big mouth, she got her own back by pointing out that his long black hair sure did look well conditioned. After tonight, she had neither the patience nor the inclination to pamper herself. Stripping, she made quick work of scrubbing away the reek of shit-scared vampire before slipping into a pair of cotton pajamas and running a brush through her hair as she put on some coffee. As soon as it was done, she took a full mug to the coffee table, set it down carefully on the coaster, and then gave in to the demands of her rabid curiosity and tore open the envelope in 1 second flat. The paper was thick, the watermark elegant, and the name at the bottom of the page terrifying enough to make her want to pack her bags and run to the furthest, tiniest hole she could ever find. Disbelieving, she ran her hands over the page a second time. The words haven't changed. I would be pleased if you could join me for breakfast at 8 a.m. Raphael. There was no address, but she had no need of it. She looked up, able to see the light-filled column of the city's Archangel Tower from the huge plate glass window that had made this apartment so ridiculously expensive and attractive. Being able to sit and watch the angels take wing from the high balconies of the tower was her guiltiest pleasure. At night they appeared as soft, dark shadows, but in the daytime their wings shimmered bright in the sun, their movements incredibly graceful. They came and went throughout the day, but sometimes she saw them simply sitting high up on these balconies, their legs hanging over the sides. The younger angels, she guessed, though youth was a relative term. Even knowing that most of them were decades older than her, the sight always made her smile. It was the one and only time she'd ever glimpsed them acting in a way that could be described as normal. Usually they were coolly remote, so far from the common humdrum of humanity as to be beyond their understanding. Tomorrow, too, she was going to be up there in that tower, late in class, but it wasn't one of those younger, maybe approachable angels she had to meet. No, tomorrow she was going to be sitting across from the Archangel himself, Raphael. Elena bent over, sick to her stomach. Alright, so that is chapter 1. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Also, let me know if you think I should keep going and reading this one. And let me know if you all have any other book recommendations